Yeah, you can add Shams Charania. You can add the guys like Jackie McMillan, Zeklow. Boston Sports guys like Sherrod Blakely, Chris Mannix, and Chris Forsberg. They're reliable, but anybody else right there, I am not believing him. Let's return to the topic subject number two. That is the consequences of the NBA draft to the Anthony Davis trade. In your morning dump, where the Celtics might not want to overpay for Anthony Davis, quote, the Lakers valued to the number 4 pick in this year's draft and can add them to Jim Albert in the NBA draft, where the buzz current surrounds at the top players. The last year's mega offer, which was the same combination of Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Los Angeles future first-round picks. The Knicks Wi-Fi'd on the top spot by landing number 3. They can add the players like Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., Mitchell Robinson, and the same assets like 2021 unprotected first-rounders acquired from Dallas in Kristaps Porzingis trade. While missing out of the Williamson made the path tougher, there is still a path to the super team if the Knicks can recruit Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving before flipping assets for Davis, but it's got trickier but not winning the lotto. Now, when the people say the Celtics can make the best offer for Anthony Davis, I'll always, this is quote from the Rich Jensen, our friend. So, he said, when people say that the Celtics can make the best offer, I always feel that statement should come with caveat. The Celtics may not make that offer. Danny Ainge doesn't overpay for the traded players. The Lakers, for instances, are willing to gut their rotations in order to add Davis now from certain angle that looks much more like what Boston did to acquire Kevin Garnett. But guys, that was 12 years ago and 2 CBs ago. The league has changed. I'm not certain that I would put Anthony Davis in the same basket as Kevin Garnett. Strictly in terms of what they do basketball-wise, they are not comparable. However, Kevin Garnett brought a ton of intangibles, and I just don't see them in Anthony Davis. If anything, the Anthony Davis situation is comparable to Kawhi Leonard, disgruntled star, year in the contract, and that put a price to Anthony Davis of 2 first-round picks and Al Horford. If any teams are willing to top that offer, let them. It's curious also to me that the Pelicans have hired David Griffin, and B, are trying to patch the things up with Davis. With Davis being represented by Rich Paul, the small-time hustle hiring Griffin could backfire. Rich Paul's understanding of what world of basketball seems are largely confined to what LeBron tells him, and LeBron might have liked Griffin, but at the end of his second tenure in Cleveland, LeBron was complaining about the roster, complaining about the moves that were not being made, and refusing to say anything to the reporters in support of Griffin. This, I doubt, but that hiring Griffin will do much more interest of Davis sticking around. Not if he's getting his opportunity from Rich Paul, and his stupid conduct of this past season suggests that he indeed taking advice from a guy whose business before meeting LeBron consisted of stealing jerseys out of the trunk of his car. I have to disagree with Rich that actually Danny Ainge will make an offer of Al Horford and somebody else plus the picks to New Orleans Pelicans. I was listening to New Orleans Pelicans Jake Madison on Lock and on the Celtics Daniel, and Jake Madison said that right now, because they possess Zion Williamson that they wanted, they are putting the stars around Zion Williamson right now, and the price is high right now. From the Lakers, they require the 4 first-rounders and from the Celtics they could require like both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I know that majority of the Celtics fans will say no, and we will maybe have to include for the trade filler even Marcus Smart. And reminder to you and to the Celtics guys out there that Danny Ainge gave Marcus Smart 4 years, $52 million contract, decreasing value. The highest value in the first year then decreased to the smallest value in the last year because intention was to use Marcus Smart as a trade chip. Of course, because Marcus Smart is playing super prior to his injury this season, I would not want to see Marcus Smart goes. But again, if you want to win the championship, you're not collecting assets and you're not collecting role players. You must have the core. We don't have the core. Danny Ainge, according to the reports that we have, is still willing to make a move and push for Anthony Davis. And whatsoever, David Griffin is willing to listen, and still the Celtics are at the prime position, according to some sources, to at least talk with David Griffin and acquire Anthony Davis. So we have decent chances, despite, again, media spin that right now the Lakers and the Knicks are ahead of us and they are collecting the super teams. So, in other words, Danny Ainge must facilitate Anthony Davis trade for a couple of reasons. First reason is, like we heard, New York Knicks is trying to form a super team of Kyrie Irving, of Anthony Davis, and Kevin Durant. So what is the best way to prevent that to happen? You to make a super team. If you don't make a super team, or if you don't make a move to make a super team, you don't have excuses if your team sucks the next 5 years. I love Danny Ainge, but he has to prevent that to happen, okay? And number two reason is Anthony Davis is generational talent. Now, everybody that is saying that we don't need Anthony Davis is just idiots. I must say that. I know that the people will be offended, but I don't care. If this year's playoffs didn't show you why we need Anthony Davis, then you're blind or stupid or a moron. You know, you saw how Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo and even the guys like Mirotic and Ilyasova destroyed us in the Milwaukee series. The tall 7-footers that can shoot the threes. And we have been destroyed on the glass too the whole season. And you're saying you don't need the young superstar, the double-double machine, 20-10 guys every single day with a good percent and room to improve for three-pointers? And the rim protector too. Are you really telling me that? Are you nuts? And the top 5 guy in the league with potential to be finals MVP, the missing piece of the championship puzzle, you don't want that guy? You don't need that guy? You would keep Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart because you don't want to acquire the top 5 talented guy in the league? Where is the brain in that? Please, Daniel, tell me. You can find Jaylen Browns, you can find even Marcus Smarts at the draft and around the league for mid-level exception contracts. But you cannot find Anthony Davis because Anthony Davises of the world are not growing at every tree so that Danny Ainge can pick them up, from the tree. Those are generational freaking talents, man. they appeared once in 10 years. And when that kind of player, like Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, they become available, you must pick the chance to get them, because you are in the back position towards New York and Los Angeles, because they are NBA babies, they are media favorites, they are, sponsors favorites, and they are better free agent destination than Boston, because they have, they are big cities, they have beaches, they have commercials, they have, everything that Boston doesn't have, the good climate even. So you are operating from the back seat, and you must take every single chance to collect the better team, or you will lose the chance to be the contender the next 10 years. That's my take. Danny, yours?
Well, before we even go to that, how about I'm going to have the people hear what Brian Windhorst said about this. Again, I got my thoughts in regards to this, including some news coming in regards to the exact same issue. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear what Brian Windhorst said in regards to the Anthony Davis situation, who he feels is at the advantage, and what he thinks specifically the Celtics are now facing in regards to this.
Okay.
Last night, because none of the teams that finished the season in the bottom 5 landed the top pick, and the Knicks were not the only fans disappointed last night, because none of the teams that finished the season in the bottom 5 landed the top pick, and that prompted Jazz center Rudy Gobert to tweet, quote, "We just witnessed the end of tanking, and we should be happy about it." Richard, do you think that's true?
I think it is. I wouldn't say it's the end of tanking. I think you want to put yourself, let's be competitive. Let's try and win games and win things. Because you look at it, there were teams like the Lakers that were trying to be competitive, and then things, injury to Bron, just the way the season was. And then it's like, okay, well, let's just play our young guys. Let's quote-unquote tank. You just want to stop the tanking at the beginning of the season. You want to stop the tanking 10, 12, 15 games into the season.
Do you know what team that started doing it?
Look, I stay out of all that stuff. But I'm just saying, you want to avoid that. I think that's what sends a bad message when guys, their only goal is to not have the worst record in the NBA history.
I think that's a good point, Rich, because the Pelicans did tank. Because they started playing Anthony Davis only 20 minutes a game.
But it didn't start off that way.
And by the way, I'm not sure that was tanking for a draft pick. That was to preserve health of their trade asset when they were stuck in a completely bizarre
It's a gray area. It's a gray area.
What ended up happening this year was, yes, Rachel, there was not season-long tanking by a bunch of teams. But
none of the teams that had the 5 worst records got the prize.
How many of those teams paid for free agents this summer?
Okay, just wait a minute. There was some legitimate tanking for those teams that fit in between 6 and 10.
Yes.
And by the way, the odds between 6 and 10 were the ones that got boosted
up.
Most.
Right. Yes.
So
you believe? Well, I
think that there was actually
suggested that perhaps there was tanking in this establishment in Dallas.
Yes, I believe Dallas was low-key tanking. Memphis, some of the lineups that Memphis was rolling out, I realized they were banged up, but I don't even know what was going on.
Well, this is the other part about it is that they weren't rewarded. That's, I think, when we're talking about it. It's like, yes, there was tanking all over, but those worst teams were not rewarded. And I think that's what they wanted to kind of steer away from.
Right,
be
they
competitive.
don't want fans to be paying for tickets for a team that has zero intention of winning.
Ennis Cantor, the first thing he wanted to talk about, well, he just didn't want to talk about the game.
Right.
He wanted to talk about where the Knicks were in the lottery.
Yes,
because he was let go basically in a tanking
epidemic.
Although Mitchell Robinson did play well for them, but nonetheless.
All right, so let's then go to this next step. 4 teams that did not win, as you say, free agents. We talked about the Anthony Davis side, and by the way, this would obviously be a trade, not a free agent. But we talked about the Anthony Davis side in the earlier segment about what Anthony would want. But let's talk about if he does manage to say to the Pelicans, "You got to deal me." And yes, Griff can say we don't have to do it till February 1st, but Griff knows the packages won't be as good for him on February 1st as they will this summer, when a team could have him legitimately for a whole season, get to maybe try to do the Paul George model, convince him to stay, that kind of thing. So who do you think will have the best packages now that we know the draft order, now that we know what picks everyone has? Who will have the best packages for Anthony Davis?
It depends on what the Pelicans' focus is. If the Pelicans want to go all young and build around Zion, I think the Knicks have the best package to offer. They can offer the number 3 pick. They can offer a couple of young players that they have on their roster right now. Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., Mitchell Robinson, the 2 first-round picks that they got from the Dallas Mavericks.
I like those two.
Right.
All of those things could come together. That's a factor. From what I understand, the Pelicans are not interested in making a deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe had they gotten the filet mignon, the Zion pick.
Right.
Yes.
But the Pelicans have the filet mignon or the crawfish etouffee, whatever you want to say in this scenario. And the Lakers have a nice ribeye, but they don't have the filet. So I think the Lakers are actually still out of position, even getting the number 4 pick.
Where is Boston in this scenario? Because they were in the driver's seat once we passed the trade deadline. Everyone thought, okay, now Boston's in the driver's seat for Anthony Davis.
Boston's trade package lost steam last night because while we were all celebrating Memphis, that pick would have gone to Boston had it moved backward. Boston would have had an extra lottery pick to offer, and their own pick did not move. The pick that they had from Sacramento did not move up, which we didn't expect it to.
Right.
So instead of having 2 lottery picks potentially to offer, now they only have 1, and it's the 14th pick, and it's not so good. And the big problem with Boston is, can you go all in on Anthony Davis offer ahead of the draft because you'd want to trade draft picks to New Orleans to do it when you don't know whether Kyrie is staying? And Kyrie is under no obligation to tell them whether he is staying, as to use his own words, ask me July 1st. So I think that the more I look at this, the more I think that the Knicks, if they want to go for it, have an offer. And most importantly, they can go ahead and draft R.J. Barrett and celebrate it and still then make that trade offer after July 1st when they find out what Kyrie does and what Kevin Durant does. It works for them.
Right.
It works against
Boston.
The Boston Celtics.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if Anthony Davis is willing to stay, and as you noted, he has floated New York as one of the cities that he would like to sign a long-term deal with, I don't know if it matters whether Kyrie and Kevin are coming or not, or either or one of them. If you could get Anthony Davis on a long-term deal, I would trade anything anybody would want for
The reality,
that.
though, is this, that he's not going to extend right away.
He can't.
So he can't, and he
6
won't.
6 months, right?
It's 6 months, but even then, it doesn't make sense for him to do it. So any team that trades for him is going to have the uncertainty that he may still get to free agency.
Woof, so much going on.
Okay, so again, that was Brian Windhorst in regards to the situation with Anthony Davis, his thoughts and all of that. So I think, Igor, when we look at the situation now with Anthony Davis, the news that I was reading while we were on the air together, while you were talking, is that what are the Lakers going to end up doing if they don't get Anthony Davis? Again, we just heard Brian Windhorst pretty much admit it's down to 3 teams, but the New Orleans Pelicans are not interested in dealing with the Los Angeles Lakers. So really, it's down to the Celtics and the Knicks in this situation. The Lakers, however, now are looking into a situation of possibly wanting to make a deal for either Bradley Beal or Kyle Lowry, from what's being reported. Now, this is where I think people got to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Celtics, if they trade for Anthony Davis, in this case, you got him for next season only. We all know that. However, when it comes to whether or not a team like the Lakers or the New York Knicks, which again you just heard, the LA and New York are the 2 teams he's mentioned already he would be willing to re-sign with. He's not going to go to Brooklyn and play for the Nets if Kyrie and Kevin Durant are playing in the New York Knicks, because he knows his team ain't going to win. He's not going to go to LA to play for the Clippers if LeBron is with another superstar on the Lakers and there isn't no other superstar on the Clippers, because now you're just in the shadow of the Los Angeles Lakers and you're not the face of the city. So he's going to want to get onto the team that actually has another superstar available at this point in this situation. And based on what we've seen, ladies and gentlemen, what happens if you get Kevin Durant and Kyrie to go to the Knicks, but the Pelicans say to the Knicks, no, we're not going to end up giving you Anthony Davis. We're sending him to Boston. Unless the Knicks can get the rest of that roster filled up with a bunch of players who say, fine, I'll take only 1 year, they ain't going to have the money available to sign Anthony Davis next year. Because Anthony Davis is going to be looking to get over $30 million in this situation. And remember, when you talk about the money in this situation, I've mentioned already, Igor, that with Kyrie Irving, he's looking at $32.7 million next season. Regardless of whether it's with us, the Knicks, the Nets, the Lakers, the Clippers, he's getting 32.7. Kevin Durant is looking at $37.2 million. So you already got, between those guys for next season, almost $70 million combined in salary cap taken up. So they only have $39 million available left to spend on the rest of the roster, regardless of whether it's New York, Brooklyn, or Los Angeles in this situation. And that doesn't, and of course, you still got to take away the money that's already registered to the rest of the guys that are there. The following year, the money's only going to go up for Kevin Durant. He's going to go over $40 million in this situation, while Kyrie Irving's going to go up closer to 34 million, 35 million. There ain't no way at that point Anthony Davis is going to be able to find his way onto the New York Knicks if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are already there, if the rest of the roster doesn't basically end up getting off the books. Same thing in New York. In Los Angeles. LeBron next year is going to be making over $39 million, and in the following year he goes up over $40 million, if I'm correct, if he resigns. How in the world can you expect for Anthony Davis to resign there if they got someone like Bradley Beal taking up closer to, let's say, $28 million plus the $40 million LeBron's going to be getting? You're already at about $69 million at that point. And so how in the world can you get Anthony Davis and then try to fill up the rest of that roster with decent players? It's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. That's the one thing that you got to, keep an eye on. Danny Ainge, by getting Anthony Davis and holding him in this situation for this season, is going to make it where Anthony Davis has to hope and pray that the Los Angeles Lakers either A, do not get another superstar on that team, and if they do, you have to hope, he's got to hope that whoever else is on that roster, whether it's guys that are there right now or guys who signed in free agency, or in this situation, whoever they get via their draft pick, that all these guys only sign for 1 year. And tell me, Igor, how many decent players, how many George Hills or Chris Middletons, in this case, guys like that, how many of them are going to go up there and say, oh, I'll take a 1 year deal just so you can kick me in the ass on the way out to give my money to Anthony Davis after a year? You're not going to get many veteran players willing to take that type of a treatment just so that LeBron can get a super team out in LA. If Kevin Durant and Kawhi team up in Los Angeles on the Clippers, then forget it. You're pretty much out of luck, because that's going to be two guys making over $40 million in a couple years. So Davis in this situation isn't going to have the opportunity to sign over there at that point. And then, of course, if Durant goes to LA, Kyrie is going to come back to Boston, because there's no way he's going to end up playing in New York on his own. So you're going to be in a pretty good spot if you get Anthony Davis to get him to stay here, because that means either LeBron's got to sacrifice another year of that team stinking pretty much, meaning another one of the final few years of his career are wasted by not being a playoff team, or he's got to carry that team in the future with whatever superstar he gets, because they're going to have to fill it up with a bunch of young players who are just thinking about the money and not really about the years itself. So keep in mind with that.
Go. Very good segment from you. We have so many rumors that, we must concentrate on our three main topics, subjects. Shane Larkin leads EuroLeague team to the finals. So congratulations to Shane Larkin, ex-Celtics player, for EuroLeague finals. We already said, according to Jackie McMullen's report, Pelicans owner would trade Anthony Davis to the Lakers only over my dead body. Again, do not take that for granted. I'm sure that they will negotiate with the Lakers. We are not stupid nor blinded like some Celtics fans or some Lakers and Knicks fans. What I want to emphasize, Daniel, another reliable source and insider, Sam Amico, said Pelicans expected to reach out to the Celtics about Anthony Davis. The New Orleans Pelicans are expected to reach out to the Boston Celtics about potential trade centered around Anthony Davis. If Davis doesn't back off his trade stance, according to Steve Bulpett from the Boston Herald. Per the report, Pelicans top basketball executive David Griffin is expected to meet with the Davis next week, and Griffin suggested his first order of business is to try to convince Davis to stay. The Pelicans won the lottery, and he wants to pair Anthony Davis with Duke star Zion Williamson. The lottery doesn't change anything about the situation with Anthony other than the fact it may be given him more signs that he could stay. I think relatively Anthony, what he's wanted to do is to win, and he's frustrated with New Orleans. I think if he looks in totality of what's happened since, Pelicans owner Gail Benson and her ownership team have empowered us to put us in position to make a difference, I think he's going to have a lot of reasons to stay. If not, according to Steve Bulpett, the Pelicans will reach to the Celtics, who are armed with the 3 first-round picks and some tantalizing young guys in Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, and Jaylen Brown. Davis requests in trade in January. There have been reports for Davis hasn't moved from the stance, and if such Davis hasn't moved the trade request from the stance, and if such is the case, sources, according to the Herald, told that Pelicans will reach to the Celtics for most obvious destination. The Celtics may still not be sure about the deal because it's not known yet what the Pelicans will want from them, but there seems to be the belief that they would be able to work the things out. The Celtics have had the Davis on their radar since the request, and he is also expected to be heavily persuaded by the Los Angeles Lakers, Clippers, and Knicks. It was reported earlier this week that the Pelicans do not have interest with negotiating with the Lakers. I know, Daniel, that like Jeff Clark said, the ESPN and the national medias will spin that news, okay? And they will say, like Zach Lowe demanded that report. He said, of course, that, this is not true, that the Pelicans will negotiate with Los Angeles Lakers, and as we expected them to do, but, remains to be seen. And, closer look from the Boston Herald, just the fresh informations to paint you the proper pictures and to give you the latest informations about Danny Ainge staying put as the Celtics faces big decisions. So Danny Ainge didn't make the trip to NBA's draft combine, whilst he's doing just fine in recovery from the heart attack. It's clear from sources that he's going to need his energy. The Celtics will have the options to undergo the major roster renovations, and Ainge and his staff will need to make some large decisions. Austin Ainge told the Herald that father is doing better and he's looking forward to staying on the job. The team still has no definitive word of the plans on Kyrie Irving, who left on 2-week vacation after the Celtics eliminated from Milwaukee. Similarly, the New Orleans is also waiting on the meeting with Anthony Davis, and the Pelican sources says that the discussion is expected to take place within next 2 weeks. So David Griffin, who took over the team's basketball operations, is planning to pitch Davis to stay put after the season, and if not, he could opt out and leave just an unrestricted free agent 2020. There has been reports that the Davis hasn't moved from the stance, and if such the case, the sources told the Herald the Pelicans will reach out to the Celtics as the most obvious trade partner. The Celtics may still not be sure about the deal, but it is also within the realm of possibility that another team could jump into the process, but it's hard to see Lakers as one of them because New Orleans, sources said, won't be doing business with the club with the bitterness from the Lakers' attempt to engineer the Davis deal during the season still sitting within the Pelicans organization. It's still unknown how much Irving's decision will impact the Davis procedures, but the Celtics seems ready to make the deal for Anthony Davis, whether Irving will stay or not. It's fair to assume that the club knows that if it can get Davis, that it must surround him with the right players. Sources around the Pelicans and the league have been said all years that he needs to be tougher, and it has pointed that he played some of his best basketball when he had Rajon Rondo in the face to call him out what is needed. There are some big dominoes to fall in the Celtics, and they could be in motion very soon. Having made over the roster into fairly significant modes over the last few years, it's likely to happen again. And Ainge will be making the calls. There was some concerns that he will step back, but he will not step back. And this is the good news. No doubt that there is too much work for Danny Ainge. I will stop there. Daniel, now couple of comments from my side. The brightest news, the biggest news, that Danny Ainge will stay put, because I don't think that we could replace Ainge if he's not capable of doing his business, other than maybe hiring Larry Bird, and we know that Larry Bird in this moment would not want to run the Celtics. Number two, Anthony Davis, the good news, Pelicans obviously do not want to make business with Lakers. I hope so. I'm doubting in that, but I hope so. And number three, we heard that they will reach out to the Celtics, and they still believe the Celtics can give them the best package, despite all the media spinning. So you saw, Daniel, one report, credible report from the credible sources, flashed down the toilet all Stephen A. Smith, Zach Lowe's, ESPN, and national media's spinning that the Lakers and the Knicks are the favorites to the Anthony Davis trade. Now, we must wait until the negotiations or talks between Anthony Davis and David Griffin are finished. We must wait if Anthony Davis is going from New Orleans or not, definitely. And in 2 weeks, like Steve Bulpett said, we can hear the start of negotiations, hopefully between the Celtics and the Pelicans. This is the situation, the freshest news, the most accurate news from the reliable insiders. Your opinion?
Well, again, I can understand. We all know why they wouldn't do it to the Lakers. The Lakers are in the same conference as them in this situation. So you're only helping a conference rival by giving them Anthony Davis. And in this case, you're giving it to one that has arguably the best player in the league in this situation. So that team is definitely going to be somewhere up towards the top of the NBA in this situation. So you're only hurting yourself, not only because of the fact that now you know you can't pass the Lakers in the standings, but on top of it, you're going to be getting a late draft pick in the first round from them if you get any picks in the future from them in this situation. So that's the first thing, which is why I would also say I expect them not to be interested in getting involved with the Clippers or any other team in the Western Conference in this situation. You know, it's just stupid to consider giving your best player, a superstar player of that caliber, to a team in the same conference in this situation. You know, let alone, let's say, in a division, the same division as you, it'd be even worse. You know, which is why New York and Boston, in my opinion, are the two at the very top in this case. Then you got the other information I mentioned earlier. The fact that in this situation with the Knicks, you have no extra draft picks this year or next year. You only have your own picks. So if the Pelicans want, let's say, 4 draft picks, like you're saying, Igor, like the reports have been throughout the year, that they want 4 first-round picks, you're going to be stuck waiting for years for the New York Knicks to get you your picks. And the only decent draft pick in this situation with the Knicks that you can get will be the pick this year, which will be the third. Because, again, if Anthony Davis gets dealt over there and then Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant join him, that pick, this team is going to be a team that's up in the top of the league, possibly, again, maybe the top team in the Eastern Conference. So you're going to get nothing but late picks from them as well in the future. And again, let's say it like this, 4 draft picks, Igor. 1 every other year, ladies and gentlemen. You're talking 7 years. 7 years that you would have to wait for the Knicks to pay off the draft picks to you. And in this situation, Igor, how good do you think, if you give Anthony Davis to the Knicks and then Durant and Irving go signing with them as well, how well do you think that team is going to be in the next 4 to 5 years in this situation, and then in the future as well after that? Do you think you're going to get the team anywhere near the bottom of the league trying to give you the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick? Heck, you're not going to get anything below the 25th pick at that point if you end up doing that. Yet, look at the situation with the Celtics. You may not get, in this situation, the best draft pick from the Celtics in terms of, a number 3 or a number 4 pick this year, but you are getting picks in this situation. You get all the picks within the next 2 years, which could help jumpstart and really, speed up the rebuilding process for you. And then there's the other thing, Igor. Let's say the Pelicans decide to say with Danny Ainge, you know what? We don't need all 4 draft picks over the next 2 years. We're willing to wait. Well, if you get Danny Ainge to give up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to you in exchange for Anthony Davis, but then let's say Kyrie Irving does walk in this case, well, what happens after next season? Anthony Davis, if he walks away as well, well, now the Celtics don't have Anthony Davis, don't have Jason Tatum, don't have Jaylen Brown. That means unless they're able to use the cap space to get somebody decent to join the team is going to go down. So, what that means, you could potentially get a good high lottery pick next year from the Celtics if you take their pick in this situation. Or should I say in 2 years. So, you're in a pretty decent spot, ladies and gentlemen, if you're the Pelicans, if you trade with the Celtics and you decide to say, don't give me all the picks within the next 2 years. Let's take out Danny Ainge. We'll work with you and wait for a few picks in a few years because we're going to bet that if Anthony Davis doesn't stay with you, your team is going to go flunking. It's going to go south, and it will get the draft picks from you in a few years. So both teams are taking a risk. We're risking by giving you Anthony Davis that you're going to continue to stay really legit, and that it'll keep Kyrie Irving here. So that would be the worst case scenario for us. But the best case scenario is that you lose Kyrie Irving and you lose Anthony Davis after next season, and we get a better pick in a draft in a few years that may be more better than the draft this year that you're getting right now, where it's only one player that really matters at that point. So people got to keep that in mind, that with the Lakers and the Knicks, you're helping the Knicks and the Lakers form a super team that's guaranteed to happen if you end up giving Anthony Davis to either of those teams. By giving him to the Celtics, you are not guaranteed of anything once he's over here. It's not a guarantee Kyrie stays, nor is it a guarantee he stays, and it could be just 1 year of Anthony Davis on this team. And when that happens and he walks away, the team can go south, and the Pelicans will be ready to cash in on a good draft pick from the Celtics, because the Celtics at that point may not have the players necessary to make the playoffs at that point. So they're thinking about it the smart way that a GM should think about it.
Okay, another subject. League executives, like fans, have a lot of thoughts on Kyrie Irving's future in Boston. Like the Celtics fans, the opinions about Kyrie Irving among league executives are different. For example, while Boston has indicated it wants to re-sign Irving, it's unclear if the feeling is mutual with Irving, who is linked with New York Knicks, then the Nets and Clippers. By signing somewhere else beside Boston, Irving would be walking away from about $80 million. But according to multiple league sources and officials, that doesn't matter. Quote, if you think the money was going to, he was going to leave on the table by going somewhere else besides Boston, is going to be issue. You don't know Kyrie, one executive said. He's different guy, and a lot of stuff that you would think would be issue for him, he could care less about that. A different league executive pointed on how the talk about Irving and issues with the media won't be the factor either. He is thinking about playing for the Knicks, as we know it. And we know how big media circus show New York can be. So, despite most of those spoken to indication, they anticipate Irving will play somewhere besides Boston next season. There were a couple of league officials who are convinced that when all is said and done, Irving will sign a long-term deal with Boston. He's playing you, all of you guys, one official said. Say what you want about leadership and all that media nonsense, but one thing we know about Kyrie is he will do his best to be Kyrie. The money, the chance to win a title sooner rather than later, to have his own team, then all the stuff matters, and when he looks all the different options he will have, I think he will have one of those what the hell I was thinking moments and go back to Boston. Then the scout said, I know this season didn't end well for the Kyrie, but when you look at what went wrong for them, it's easy to blame Kyrie because he didn't shoot the ball well. But when you hear what others are saying afterwards, Brad Stevens saying he did a bad job, players talking about how they sacrificed this and that, it's pretty obvious that they had a lot of issues going on that were bigger than just one player, even a player that was Kyrie. The scout added, I think he comes back, and he comes back with an attitude, a little eager, a little edgier than just his words, but his play. all agreed that the destination situation about Anthony Davis via trade would increase the chances of the Celtics to re-sign him. Most believed that the Celtics have to do before officially get back to Kyrie Irving. Obviously, the Celtics want Anthony Davis. Hell, we all want Davis. But even they strike out on getting him, they still have to make changes. If they are going to go all in Kyrie, they have to build this team around him with the guys who complement him more than the last year's teams. And while all those spoken for NBC, Boston had their own rationale for what they believe of Irving's fate, the one thing they were agreed are the changes in the Boston roster. So what will those changes include Kyrie Irving or not? Daniel, a lot of good points have been made there. All the stuff that we have been saying, you and I, why you and I believe that he will stay, it has been confirmed from the sources close to the Celtics like NBC Sports Boston and the Herald that still the Celtics plans are to pair Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, which is the most logical, and build the roster around them. But again, it is not enough, and we will talk that the changes needs to be made not only in the Celtics roster, but in the Celtics coaching staff. I'm not talking about firing Stevens. I'm talking about Stevens hiring the new assistant coaches. Kendrick Perkins will coach at the draft combine, and the Celtics reached out to, if I'm correct, ex-Memphis Grizzlies coach for Brad Stevens' assistant. That is, Daniel, confirmation and gratification of the Celtics talk radio analysis, because I think, Daniel, that you and I were the first to criticize the Stevens, to detect the problems in the coaching staff, to have the courage to tell the truth to the Celtics nation that Stevens is doing a bad job, which he said himself, and to say what was the problem before Gary Washburn came out with his article that the Celtics needs to make changes in the coaching staff because the communication between the Celtics coaching staff and the players sucks this year. Okay? Sucks. They are on the different planet, and you cannot work like that. And if that is the truth, then you need to make changes. You need to make changes. And I'm not talking about cosmetic changes like, I'm going to change an attitude. Yes, he needs to change an attitude, but he needs to make personal changes too, because we lost the two assistant coaches, important ones, Misa Shrewsbury and Walter McCarthy. Brad Stevens interested in hiring former Grizzlies head coach J.B. Bickerstaff to the coaching staff. So Bickerstaff would be big name addition to fill the void left by assistant coaches in Boston. So Misa Shrewsbury won't be. He had 6 seasons in Boston. He was defensive coach, defensive big part of the Celtics, because the Celtics had the strong defense, top 1, top 3 defense the last 2 seasons. So to fill the void, Brad Stevens wants to hire J.B. Bickerstaff. He's known for his ascended to the head coach ranks in the 2 separate situations, once in Houston Rockets 2015 and another in Memphis as a head coach of Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies jumped out to 12-5 mark this season, and they will land the number 2 pick. Bickerstaff ascended after Dave Yeager was fired in 2017, when Bickerstaff finished the rest of the season as interim head coach, and he was the head coach in following season. Not very extensive coaching search. It was rumored that Bickerstaff was chosen because of the good relationship with Michael Conley Jr. and Mark Gasol. So as a coach of Houston and Memphis, Bickerstaff was 85 and 131 win record, or 39%. He was one of four in the playoffs 2016. So as terrible as Memphis was in the past season, 33 and 49, their defensive strategy was excellent, and Bickerstaff is recognized as the key part of defensive strategy. They finished the season ranked third in the league opponents per game percent and ninth best defensive rating. So since Shrewsbury was defensive specialist for Boston, Bickerstaff might be the right person to plug the hole because Shrewsbury went to Purdue. Nothing is finalized yet, but it is interested to see his name pop up in the Brad Stevens radar. And another void to be filled, Walter McCarthy as communicator. Like I said, Daniel, Brad Stevens doesn't know how to communicate with a big star like Kyrie Irving. This is the big issue this season. Everybody was blinded and everybody was attacking and still attacking only Irving. One player cannot cause all the damage that the Celtics suffered this season, no matter Kyrie or somebody else. Now, I want to say that Kendrick Perkins, I'm not sure if he is the right person to be that Walter McCarthy replacement. It remains to be seen. He was bitter towards Kyrie Irving. He was criticized Kyrie Irving. He was criticized Terry Rozier and another Celtics players on some podcasts that he appeared recently. But again, what the Celtics need, Daniel, is not some magical coach from the bench. They need communicator. Walter McCarthy was doing the great job in this role. If Kendrick Perkins can do that role, I'm fine with hiring Kendrick Perkins for permanent job as a Celtics coaching assistant. I love Perkins. If he cannot be communicator between the players and the coach, head coach, then we don't need Kendrick Perkins. This is my stance. A lot of unpacked here, Daniel, so I want your opinion about one, Kyrie Irving destination and what executives are saying. Executives around the leagues are saying exactly what you and I have been saying without any sources, just conclusions and common sense that Kyrie Irving will be back to Boston most likely. And also that Pelicans will talk with the Celtics, which we heard. And I want your opinion about Memphis coach and Kendrick Perkins too.
Well, with Kyrie Irving again, we all know it's pretty much down to the same situation, same three cities, pretty much the same 5 teams that Anthony Davis is connected to. Same exact teams for Kyrie. Kyrie's got a lot on the line when it comes to this decision of his, because if he leaves Boston to then run to New York to play alongside Kevin Durant and whether it be the Knicks or the Brooklyn Nets, unless he's got a legit reason, which I would think the only reason for him to mention, that I left Boston for this specific reason, that Boston, that we can basically say, okay, that maybe that's a legit reason and you're telling the truth, and then that's understandable, would be if he says, I decided to leave because the fans, it was proven they truly didn't want me there.
Right.
That argument I can understand and accept from Kyrie Irving.
Daniel, don't forget the medias. Medias are doing everything to make Kyrie Irving leave the Boston. Both Boston sports medias and both national medias.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Yeah, well, like I said, though, you said for different reasons. We all know why the national media wants it.
Right.
And all that. The Boston sports media, majority of them are people who basically seem to, think that for the most part, he had a bad attitude, that because of the fact that he committed at the start of the season, then basically backed out midway through the season, that it's proof that he's not trustworthy, so you can't keep him. But, again, the way I look at it, ladies and gentlemen, if Kyrie Irving ends up leaving the Celtics to then jump on the bandwagon with Kevin Durant in New York or in Brooklyn, it's only going to look bad for Kyrie, because that'll be Kyrie admitting that he learned through this season he does not have what it takes to be the best man on a championship team. You ditch LeBron James in Cleveland to run to this team saying you wanted to be the man, and then after 2 years of being there, 1 year you couldn't play due to injury, the second year you made it through the entire year, but your team was terrible. And so then after that, you just, rather than trying to hit the reset button and at least give it another year's try, you decide to get up and walk away. That will not look good on Kyrie Irving's reputation. Second, you mentioned you cannot only blame him, you got to blame everybody. Brad Stevens, from what we heard and from what we read in the reports, the report I gave you guys in the group itself from the Boston Herald, where pretty much people were admitting that Brad Stevens and the entire coaching staff just didn't know how to respond to the players in the locker room whenever there was a dispute. Brad Stevens is one of those coaches that usually tries to let the guys resolve the issues themselves. He doesn't get involved in the issues amongst the players. So pretty much it was going to take Kyrie Irving and Terry Rozier throwing punches at each other, ladies and gentlemen, and drawing
this
blood.
Is another sub of ours, Terry Rozier. Yeah, we will hear audio.
So it was literally going to take that for the guys in the locker room to start swinging at each other, bringing in baseball bats and axes and all of that, in order for Brad Stevens to get involved in between the two of them and say, cut the bull crap, this isn't happening. Ladies and gentlemen, that's one reason why I say Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers would have been a better coach for this team than Brad Stevens under these circumstances, because we saw Doc Rivers get you could say loud and aggressive even with Garnett, Pearson, Ray Allen back when we had them, whenever those guys were out of line. Brad Stevens, not only can he not do it with the veterans, he can't even do it with the guys at the end of the bench pretty much. That's the way it pretty much has been proven. He did not have the cojones to get involved and sit down the players who are just starting their careers and tell them you're wrong for the way you're acting. Now, regardless of whether you're one of those people that says you want to give all the blame to the star player because of the fact that's the way it works, you're the best player, you get all the blame when things go south, you get all the credit when things go positive. Fine. But you cannot come out here and say Kyrie Irving messed up everything when you know for a fact that last year he played with the exact same guys under the exact same roles for a majority of the season and had you in the number one spot for a majority of the season in the Eastern Conference. What was the difference between last year and this year? That last year, Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown had not gotten that taste of being a star player in an NBA playoffs run in front of the Boston Celtics fans. Because the year before that, Terry Rozier was still a bench player. Jaylen Brown was still a bench player as well, Sometimes he started the year before when Isaiah was around, but it was also his first year. Last year was the first year for Jason Tatum in this situation. So none of them had that taste of what it's like to be a starter and being the man that your team depends on to do most of the work. Last year in the playoffs, they get it. This year they come back and want it again. They want the same feeling of having to basically feel super important, having to feel that they're the one the ball has to go through and that they're the ones making all the plays and getting all the glory. Well, the moment it was revealed they weren't going to get that option because Kyrie Irving was back and so was Gordon Hayward, things went south in the locker room. And which guys in this situation were out of line? The ones that basically are the superstars and the world champion in this case, that had already been given the word of Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens that when they were healthy they would be the guys in the starting lineup, or the ones who were signing for only $6 million, $5 million and were told from the get-go that they would be coming off the bench in this situation and that the only way they would start is if basically there was an injury to somebody ahead of them. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can go saying that you want to get rid of Kyrie Irving for his attitude and the fact that you feel he wasn't a great leader, well then I got a newsflash for you. Unless you want me to call you a hypocrite, and you prove you are a hypocrite if you disagree with me on this point, the only way you get away with basically proving you're not a hypocrite is if you can say, to get rid of Kyrie Irving, I'm also prepared to get rid of Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. Because those guys are guilty of the exact same crime that you are blaming Kyrie Irving of. Think about it like a regular crime in the street, Igor. How many of you people out there that are probably going to watch this video or are in our group and all that would say you get absolutely pissed when a black man commits murder and he's getting 25 years to life, yet a white man commits the same type of murder and he's getting off with a plea deal to get only 12 and a half years?
Absolutely.
Heck, all you people basically want to riot in the street in this situation, turn cars over, attack the police department and all that when something like that happens. Well, in this situation, Kyrie Irving's the black man in this case. Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown are being treated like the white man in that scenario. They all committed the same crime, pretty much, arguing, making themselves think that they were putting themselves out there, I guess you could say, as though they were more important than the team overall and the team's final destination. And yet, the only one you all want to get rid of is Kyrie Irving. The guy who actually had the biggest right to say, I deserve to be a starter because I'm already a world champion and I'm a multiple-time All-Star. So, how does that work? You can be pissed for an injustice out there when it's a black and white person, but yet the same circumstances are being applied here, but all because those kids made one fluke playoff run? Oh, you can treat them and give them a plea deal for their crime, but you got to give Kyrie Irving a life sentence to get him off the team? Heck, even some of you want to do it to Gordon Hayward. Some of you want to have Hayward sent out packing in this situation, when yet you knew for a fact Hayward was just coming back from injury. It was going to take him a while to get back to normal. And on top of it, did you hear Hayward, Igor, at any time this year complain, hey, I'm a multiple-time All-Star. I was the best player in Utah getting them to the playoffs. I was a one-man team pretty much out there. And yet my playing time, my starting role is being given to Jaylen Brown, who's a third-year player, or Jason Tatum, who's a second-year player. Marcus Smart has more of a right think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to be a starter in this league. Gordon Hayward has more of a right. Kyrie Irving, for damn sure, has more of a right to be a starter than those two and Terry Rozier. Yet, Hayward never complained about having to come off the bench. He accepted the role in this situation. Marcus Smart never complained about having to come off the bench, whether it was last year or whether it was this year, in exchange for Tatum and Brown being the ones to start in this case. The only ones who got the fat heads and let it get to their fat heads to basically make it where it's either my way or the highway Boston Celtics was Tatum, Brown, and Rozier. So tell me, I can accept you saying to get rid of Kyrie Irving if you're willing to also say that you're willing to accept letting go of Tatum, Brown, and Rozier as well for them committing the same crime. But if you're going to tell me, oh no, I can't go the route of letting Tatum, Brown, or Rozier go, but I have to let Kyrie Irving go in this situation, then no. You are a hypocrite in this situation, the worst hypocrite that you can be as a sports fan, in my opinion. Now, you said you got to work around Kyrie Irving, Igor. That's also true. It's got to be one or the other if it's Danny Ainge in this situation, him making a decision. If you want Kyrie Irving to stay, you got to send Tatum and Brown packing, because you are going to need to get some veteran players that can get along with Kyrie Irving and keep their heads on a level and basically keep their eye on the prize, knowing that the prize is banner 18 and another championship for the city of Boston. The prize isn't you getting a starting spot and getting more minutes to make your stats go up so you can get a better contract in this situation. You get a veteran, because look how many veterans are out there accepting a lesser role on other teams, and because of it, it's making a major impact. Want a nice example? A guy who just chewed us up in round 2, George Hill. George Hill is somebody that could be a starter for most teams in this league, but he's taking a role on the bench in this situation, and he's doing well at it. So that's another thing. Either Tatum and Brown got to be dealt away and Rozier's got to be let go to keep Kyrie Irving, or you let Irving, let Horford, let Hayward, try to trade Hayward somewhere else if you want to keep Brown and Tatum, and try to go young overall. And try to wait for a few years to hope maybe in a few years when their contracts are up, you got the ability to cash in then. But you cannot go back to what you had this past season and make it a combination of youth that's got too much talent to basically to basically fit in, and at the same time go with too much veterans who in this situation are entitled to get better spots than the youth, and because of it, it leads to a civil war in that locker room, and at the same time, you got a coaching staff that will not do nothing about it, which is why Kendrick Perkins, even though I don't agree with him, Igor, with the way he actually sounded in those interviews, I do think he'd be perfect. I think he'd be perfect because of the fact that if there's anybody that's going to have the mentality to tell the young players and the superstars straight up what it's all about and how you're supposed to basically make the sacrifices to be a Boston Celtic, it's that guy. I would think the only other player the only two guys ahead of him that you could say former Celtic players that maybe would be better qualified would be Pierce and KG. KG being the one at the very top of the list. Because if there was anybody that showed the heart, the hustle, and the willing to sacrifice for basically being a team player, it was that man in this situation. But after that, Kendrick Perkins is the right person because he's got the right attitude, and he is one that will not fear anybody that Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge decide to bring into that locker room to basically sit them down, put them in their place, and basically say, you don't like it? Suck it up or ask for a trade in this situation and admit to the fans that you think more about yourself than an actual championship. because that's the last thing we need on this team and in this franchise in this city. Boston, the Celtics, are the only team right now that are not going to be bringing you a championship. Your Red Sox, the Red Sox did it. The Patriots did it. The Boston Bruins are just 4 wins away from being the third team to bring a championship in the last year to the Boston area. The Celtics are the only ones that failed. And why is that? Because the Red Sox, the Patriots, and the Bruins all have players who are willing to sacrifice and put their personal agendas to the side. So that's what Danny Ainge is going to have to find. Players who are willing to put their personal agenda to the side for the ultimate goal. And in this situation, this past season proved Rozier, Tatum, and Brown are not those type of players.
Okay, and according to Jackie McMillan from ESPN, that I mentioned that he's one of maybe top 5 insiders or reliable sources in the NBA, unlike Brian Windhorst and the others from ESPN, except Adrian Wojnarowski, and I don't know if we mentioned Shams Charania. Shams is number 2, without any doubt. Jackie McMillan indicated on the Windhorst podcast there is a regret with Kyrie. There is the person, Kyrie, that is introspective enough when the time passes and he looks back to the mistakes he made. He has the capacity of willingness to say, I wish I could have done that very differently, and I think that's important as we go forward. So as we go forward, this is good for the continuation in the next seasons. Also, that indicates Kyrie is peace poor, and he is introspective, and he is willing to accept his part of guilt. Okay, so Kyrie is not egomaniac like the people are saying. Kyrie has regrets, okay? I just want to ask you, and I mean, we don't have time. We will skip to Terry Rozier right now, the last subject on the show. I will ask you and the others, did you hear any words of regret from Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown? Of course not, because who are they? They are stars in their heads, right? They are the best. They cannot make any mistakes. They are not guilty. Listen to Terry Rozier. We will play Terry Rozier right now, okay? He is not guilty. Everybody else are guilty except Terry Rozier, right? So, about the guilt, the last sentence I have, you made very good points. I don't have anything to add except, okay, Kyrie Irving is guilty. But I have problematics in looking everybody, blaming number 2 player at Cleveland Cavaliers championship team, since we have the best player of the Hawks 60 wins team and the all-star from Utah Jazz second round exit team, who, was the top free agent. So, the other players, the other stars, we have 2 other maximum contract guys on the team, and everybody yet are blaming the second best player of the Cleveland Cavaliers for not being the good leader. I cannot understand that, but okay, maybe I'm stupid and maybe all the others are smarter than us, Danny. But we made our statements, we repeat them, and we get confirmation from the events that are happening right now and from the insiders. And we will see in the next years the revelation of everything that was going on, the dirty laundry from these years, maybe memoirs of some players in 10 years from now. And we will talk about that. Let's hear Mr. Unmistakable Terry Rozier, who made some shoot in his legs, in my opinion, on ESPN. So this is Terry Rozier on the ESPN.
You made headlines with what you had to say to Yahoo Sports after getting eliminated in the conference semifinals by the Bucks, saying this. We'll pull up that full screen here, and I will read to you. Coach Brad Stevens was in a tough position, one of the toughest positions, dealing with all these guys with attitudes, all that bleep, all the things weren't fair to me, but it's not about me. That's why I don't expletive and complain. I don't give an expletive what nobody say. I sacrifice the most out of anybody. I'm a top point guard in this league. I feel like it's a fresh start, whether I'm here or whether I'm gone.
Well, that's a whole lot of you said just then.
Yeah, I said what I said.
Let me ask you this, Terry. What went wrong with the Celtics this year?
I feel like, from the beginning, obviously we had big goals, and a lot of people had big goals for us, and the first 5 games of the season, you just seen things go downhill from the beginning. I feel like we wasn't playing like how we wanted to. The game plan wasn't. We didn't go out there and execute the game plan how we wanted to. So I feel like we had to make adjustments. We had to change the lineup, and then we just couldn't get things right ever since then.
Let's go back to the quote. What exactly is it that you did sacrifice, in your words?
I sacrificed, obviously my talent, I think the most. Me being out there and giving my full style of play, how I play, how Terry Rozier play. I feel like I couldn't be that person this year.
And why do you feel you couldn't be that person?
Just obviously in the shadow of some guys. I feel like a lot of the ball was in either Kyrie or Gordon Hayward's hand most of the time. So I feel like, either Terry Rozier was just in the corner or, just on the bench.
Because going into the season, we saw what happened when those guys weren't there last year. Went to the Eastern Conference Finals in a weaker Eastern Conference.
Right.
And you were playing more as a team. And going into this season, the question was, how are they going to integrate these 2 big pieces? Hayward and Kyrie. We've been arguing on this show what went wrong this year. Both contributed. But he has singled out Gordon Hayward as being the guy who the people had hurt feelings. This is like the coach's pet kind of guy. And I've singled out Kyrie Irving, a ball-dominant guy who the team doesn't seem to play for the same way as when he wasn't on the court. So when you say guys and you mention by name Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, but which one of those 2 are you talking about?
Well, so when my name first get called, I'm out there with Kyrie Irving for a little bit of half of my minutes. So I'm really not being my position. I'm not being Terry Rozier because I have to adjust to how Kyrie plays. And then when Kyrie goes out, Gordon Hayward comes in, and I feel like his usage is super high. So a lot of things are getting called from him. A lot of plays get called from him. So that's pretty much.
So it's both of them equally, would you say?
This is for me. I'm not saying what goes on for the team, why we wasn't successful for the team. I'm just talking about me. And like I said in my quote, I don't complain. That's not me. But that's just what it is. It's the truth.
How difficult was it for you to play the way that you played and to lead this team the way that you led them last year in the postseason without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, to then come into this season and not only have to obviously return to a reserve role, but to basically, as you would say, really sacrifice your game in what amounts to essentially a contract year for you? I'm not talking about now, as you reflect on it. I'm talking about at the beginning of this season, when you realized the magnitude of the sacrifice you were going to have to make. How did you feel? What were the kind of things you said to a Brad Stevens or a Danny Ainge?
Well, I like to add that things was all good before we actually started. I still had the positive mindset that, we was going to make it work. But, ever since that day that Kyrie, announced in front of the fans that if we would like to have him back, he would come back, things I felt like shifted left for me. And I just seen the way people treated me with the attitudes, and I feel like I was just thrown all the way in the back seat. And I just had to adjust to that. And I talked to Brad multiple times, I talked to guys multiple times, but I just feel like it was just nothing that nobody.
Who's the attitudes when you say that in the quote and you say it now? Like, whose attitudes are you speaking about? Your coach or what teammates?
Attitudes like what?
Because you basically said I'm dealing with all these types of attitudes, and you just said it right now.
I feel like every team deal with different type of attitudes. You playing with guys that's getting paid so much money, as in Gordon Hayward. You're dealing
over
with,
$30 million.
You're dealing with Kyrie Irving, who everybody knows about. Was nice. Then you got guys like me, JT, Jaylen Brown. So it's everybody attitude, not just those guys. Myself, and it wasn't easy for coach because you got guys that want to be the man, guys that is the man. You got guys that's already paid. You got guys that want to get paid. So that wasn't easy. This was the most talented team I ever played on.
Right, and it didn't work out. No one feels sorry for Brad Stevens not being able to figure it out. You got all that talent. Stephen A. has brought up Gordon Hayward. As I said, I've focused on Kyrie because it's supposed to be his team. He was supposed to be the leader of the team. He's won a championship. He wanted his own team. He got to Boston. You guys are loaded. How much do you think the negative result ultimately, you were a good team but not a great one, how much is a result of Kyrie? How much is a result of the young guys, yourself included, but obviously you mentioned Tatum and you mentioned Jaylen Brown, not adjusting yourselves properly to Kyrie? Or is it a Gordon Hayward issue?
I feel like it's a little bit of both, and I feel like that along with the coaches, of them treating Gordon and Kyrie, I wouldn't say different than everybody else, but I feel like they just treat them like they was on that level where there were no adjustments that could be made because they are who they are, and we never figured it out. We never figured it out after that.
Okay, so we heard Terry Rozier, and I mean, I don't know what was that, Daniel. I don't know what was he thinking. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish. I don't know if his agent knew about this appearance. If agent knew about the appearance, then definitely he should fire his free agent. But I think this way he is doing his exit from Boston. Okay, I'm not sure if Boston will offer him contract even if Kyrie Irving leaves the Celtics. And also about the other teams, he's hoping for the big contract from the other teams. Okay. I'm not sure if the other teams will give him the big contract. Maybe some teams like Suns, desperate ones. But, I mean, listen, the other teams will look not only at the court, and on the court he was horrible, but to the player's attitude. And those kind of statements are making more damage to the player than the team. And this is my first take. I have more opinions about bullcrap that he presented us on this series of interviews on ESPN and national medias, which are really painful to listen if you're the Celtics fans. But I'm really stunned. I was really stunned. I was like, what was he doing to? What was he trying to accomplish here?
Well, I feel pretty much he was trying to accomplish a situation of trying to give his side of the story, knowing that odds are we're not going to know anything else that took place inside that Celtics locker room because odds are you're not going to hear from Kyrie Irving, you're not going to hear from Al Horford, or the rest of these guys really giving you as many details as Terry Rozier has. You know, I also think him saying this is him trying to justify the way he acted throughout this season, because he feels pretty much he was disrespected, thrown to the back burner, and, you know, he feels more entitled in this situation. But like I said, this is where last year's playoff run got him a fat head, and it ended up costing us. Because you heard him, everything was fine going into this season. Even after last season, ladies and gentlemen, everything was fine with him because he knew Kyrie Irving's coming back. Kyrie Irving's going to be the starter, so he was aware of it. But the moment Kyrie Irving revealed, oh, if you guys will have me back, I want to return and stay long-term with you, that's when Terry Rozier realized a few things. One, what does that mean now for me? I enjoy being a starter. I enjoyed the reaction the fans were giving me last year in the playoffs. I enjoyed being the talk of everybody in the media, being the one everybody was talking about on the talk shows and things like that. I enjoyed getting all the spotlight. Now that Kyrie Irving is back, not only am I not going to get it this year, but now it's guaranteed if Kyrie Irving resigns, I won't get it any other years in the future with this franchise. So that means pretty much I'm not going to get that opportunity anymore so long as I'm here on the Celtics. Unless they decide to give me somebody else's spot, which means either I got to jump ahead of Jason Tatum into his spot, which we all know, Tatum versus Rozier, who's the better player? Tatum is. Tatum versus Brown, who's the better player? Jaylen Brown. Tatum versus Gordon Hayward, who's the better player? Gordon Hayward. Rozier, should I say, versus Gordon Hayward. Rozier versus Horford. Horford is the better player. Rozier realized he is not as good as the rest of those guys in terms of talent. Those guys are already ahead of him. And so you're not going to get a starting spot unless there's an injury, especially if Kyrie stays. Now, if Kyrie was to leave, then you got a shot. Maybe Danny Ainge decides, I'll give you the money because you already know the system. The fans already know what to get out of you. You're already used to the teammates and all that. They enjoy you. So I got a shot. It may be slim, but I still have a shot of getting that starting spot next season if Kyrie leaves. The moment Kyrie says that, your shot goes right out the window. But again, what did you do? The attitude, Igor. He says the attitude. That, he was getting attitudes all season. Well, from who? Notice that the question that Stephen A. and Max and them were asking in regards to that, he didn't really answer it. Which people were giving you those attitudes, Terry Rozier, that you feel in this situation was the reason why you had the right to act the way you acted? Was it Kyrie Irving that was mistreating you? Because if it is, then fine. Was it Gordon Hayward? Was it Al Horford? Was it the coach? Who was it that was giving you a mistreatment? And in this situation, what do you call mistreatment in this case? Because if it's them telling you, oh, you're not on the same level as Kyrie Irving, then newsflash, buddy, it's the truth. You aren't on Kyrie Irving's level. And you just got to accept that. It's going to be years before you're anywhere near his level in this situation. But no, he didn't have it in him to actually answer that question, so we'll never know. Is it the fans in this situation? Maybe the fans mistreated you? Well, then newsflash to that as well. How many games this year did Terry Rozier actually look like the Terry Rozier we saw in the playoffs last year? I would bet, ladies and gentlemen, that number is less than 25% of the games that you actually played. That we actually saw the scary Terry come out and you got to be wearing the mask and all that to show your support of him. The other 75%, he was just scary. As simple as that. So how can you expect to get a good treatment and try to be treated the way Kyrie Irving is on his level if yet you're not producing? This kid, Igor, unfortunately to me, just showed why I've been saying to everybody he's just as guilty as Kyrie Irving is. If not more guilty. Because in this situation, he showed, just with that interview, along with the interview he did after the game itself, the Game 5 loss that eliminated the Celtics in that second round matchup against the Bucks, this kid showed that his mindset throughout the entire season has all been about himself. So, why in the world should we keep him, ladies and gentlemen? If you don't want to keep Kyrie Irving because you don't think Kyrie Irving's a team player, then why should we want to keep Terry Rozier? If there's a bunch of other point guards you can try to go after. I'd say to Danny Ainge, if I'm Wyc Grousbeck or Brad Stevens or somebody else that can have an influence on the situation, let the kid walk. As simple as that. Let the kid walk because he is not going to be worth the money that he's looking for. He's showed already in the playoffs that when the pressure is on, he doesn't have what it takes to actually be the same point guard that we saw last year in the playoffs when there was no pressure whatsoever. Because trust me, ladies and gentlemen, even making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, there was no pressure on this Celtics team to actually get past LeBron James and the Cavaliers. If anything, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, that was probably the round they had the least pressure on them. Because as the second seed, you are expected to get past Milwaukee in round one. As the second seed with home court against Philadelphia, you were expected to get past them. But against LeBron and the Cavs, you were not expected to beat them, so there was no pressure whatsoever at that point. So come on. This kid, Igor, to me, he just did more damage to his reputation and more damage to any legit team wanting him. Right now I'm hearing the Chicago Bulls might be interested in signing him. That type of team would be perfect for him because the team stinks. They're in the middle of a rebuild, and he can maybe help them get back to slowly getting back to the playoff spots. But you're not going to see any legit teams that have a shot at the NBA playoffs looking to make this kid their starting point guard.
I mean, Daniel, you said a lot of things. I want to get back to what he said about the rotations. You know, he said, again, if you go to ESPN and to our Celtics enemies programs, they will get the worst out of it. Watching Terry, I was like, no, Terry, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Because, again, he was trying to justify what he did on the court or what he didn't do on the court. I understand. So everybody's guilty. The coach is guilty. Kyrie Irving is guilty. You and I probably are guilty for his games, but he's not guilty. I understand that. He was saying like the rotations were not good. Something like, we practice on the court the first unit and the second unit. I was in the second unit, and on the games, the Stevens mixed the first and the second unit, so we could not play. We could not execute the plays that we practice. This is bullcrap, because there is no different offensive and defensive sets for the first and second unit. there is one set for one and only set or series of sets for the first and second unit. So you as a player should know offensive and defensive sets, no matter are you on the first unit or the second unit. So it doesn't matter with whom are you playing. You should learn and execute the plays because they are the same. So this is bullcrap. Okay? This is one thing in which he's trying to justify his poor playing. Other thing that Max said on the CLNS Media, I recommend you to listen to Max podcast on CLNS Media. He said he was reading the plays, the plays. It's freaking read and react, offense and motion and defense. On the defense, he was the weakest spots on the court last year, remember? I mean, remember that LeBron attacking him on the low post. So, anyway, on the offense, he was wrong reading the opponent's defenses and wrong reactions. He was dribbling from east to west. Last year in the playoffs, I mean 2018 playoffs, when the Celtics reached the finals, he was dribbling from south to north. He was going to the rim. He was attacking. He was executing. He still was not the right playmaker, the good playmaker. He can be secondary playmaker, but he cannot be primary playmaker. I don't like him as my starting or even backup playmaker. He was not playing as a good backup playmaker. If I'm Ainge, if I execute the Anthony Davis trade, I'm trying to do sign and trade Terry Rozier instead of Smart. Okay? And even if Smart is traded, I'm not signing back Terry Rozier. I'm trying to sign, for example, if I execute Anthony Davis trade, I'm trying to sign Rajon Rondo because he plays well with Anthony Davis. Okay? He knows the system. He can maybe, play for one of our exceptions, or we can open the room for him. But I'm not bringing back Terry Rozier. For me, Terry Rozier is closed story, and I'm deeply disappointed in him. I also would not have anything against trading Brown and Tatum for Anthony Davis. Unlike majority of the Celtics nations who they see Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum like Michael Jordan and LeBron James, okay? So they're acting like that way. Again, falling in love with emotions is dangerous because you're falling in love with a ghost. So the Celtics nation, Daniel, fell in love with two ghosts that doesn't exist and probably will not exist on this realm of existence on the earth. They exist only in their heads. This is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as superstars. That doesn't exist. And it will probably never exist. And I'm a pragmatic person, and the persons that are telling me I'm not sacrificing the future for the rental player, I'm asking him, what future? The future of middle pack team, the second round exit team for the next 5 to 10 years. Yes, I am making the risk. Yes, I'm sacrificing that crappy future for potentially reward. If I have two superstars, the veterans will follow, and I can figure it out the third star, even Gordon Hayward, or you make proposition to trade for Bradley Beal. If Gordon Hayward is not Gordon Hayward, you get rid of Gordon Hayward, you trade him to Cleveland, and you trade for example, Bradley Beal. And you have imagine the three players like Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and Bradley Beal, and add the remaining parts of the Celtics roster, Marcus Smart, Al Horford. That would be awesome team, right? That would be instant contenders. You figure it out, the bench. But no, the Celtics fans are not thinking that way, sadly. And Terry Rozier shooted his way out of the Boston. He is person number one to blame for me. Besides, of course, Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge. When I pass Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge, the first person to blame for the disastrous atmosphere in the Celtics locker room is Terry Rozier. And then, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. This is just me, maybe. Something to add, Daniel?
Well, again, you have the fact that I've already said it to myself. Those two, Ainge and Stevens, get the blame more than anyone because of the fact that none of them put the guys in their place. None of them were willing to sit with Terry Rozier early in the season to basically put him alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in their proper place and let them know, regardless of what had happened last year, regardless if you guys had won the whole damn thing, you were never going to get the spots over Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward because we got too much money invested into them just for them to be bench players, and they have too much on their resumes already throughout their careers that are longer than any of the careers you have in this league to actually be having them sit on the bench behind you guys. For that, we might as well just trade them if we wanted you guys to be the ones to start. Put them in their place and tell them, if you guys don't want to accept it, that we are going to have you as bench players so long as those guys are healthy, then tell us right now and we'll trade you before the trade deadline. Danny Ainge could have gotten a decent veteran by giving up Terry Rozier, for example, with a draft pick this past season to try and help Gordon Hayward on the bench. But no, none of them did any of that. You ended up keeping Rozier, keeping Tatum, keeping Brown throughout the entire year. And in the first round, your team won due to the fact that Victor Oladipo didn't play and your team was just too talented to not be able to win. The moment you face a team that did have talent and did have a superstar that basically gets the benefit of the calls from the officials, your team's cohesiveness was too much to overcome when it came to the talent. Your talent was no longer an advantage anymore. And it showed. Which is why, like I said, Terry Rozier's interview after Game 5, when they questioned him about the restricted free agency situation and how, what happens, about Danny Ainge possibly, tendering an offer to him and making him a restricted free agent, he goes, no comment. So Terry Rozier doesn't want Danny Ainge to give him an offer in terms of making him a restricted free agent because he knows that could also lead to a bunch of teams not wanting him because they'll have to give the Celtics another draft pick in exchange for signing him. Terry Rozier, in order for Danny Ainge to make Terry Rozier a restricted free agent, it would be $4,285,797 Danny Ainge has to give to Terry Rozier at least in order to make it that he qualifies as a restricted free agent. And like you said, Igor, he gets a restricted free agent. Let's say one team offers him then a deal and Danny Ainge matches it. Hey, he could add Terry Rozier to the draft, the trade proposal for Anthony Davis in this situation, alongside Brown and Tatum, and maybe you don't have to give up Marcus Smart right now with the amount that I just mentioned for Terry Rozier, alongside Jaylen Brown and Tatum's situation. You're only $8.4 million away from what Anthony Davis is going to ask for in this situation. And again, that's if you only give Rozier $4.2 million. You could give him a little bit more than that if another team offers him more than that, and then make it where you're adding more to the situation, and now you're only less than that away. You're not $8.4 million. Let's say a team tells him, we'll give you $10 million. Well, give him the $10 million to match it. Make him play for you for next year. But in this situation, you're making him play for you just so you can trade him. Do that, and at that point, there you go. You've now matched the salary situation nearly dollar for dollar at that point in this case. All you got to do is fill the rest of it up with the draft picks, and like that, you keep Marcus Smart. You're able to take Anthony Davis, and at the same time, you can still keep Kyrie Irving and Al Horford with their bird rights in this situation. So, trust me, Danny Ainge knows what he's doing. In my opinion, you do not give Kyrie Irving any offer with the intention of bringing him back to play for you next season. If you give him an offer, it's for you to send his rear end somewhere else where he can end up playing alongside Tatum and Brown in this situation. Only problem for them is that they got Drew Holiday. And unless Rozier feels he deserves to go ahead of Drew Holiday, or unless the Pelicans trade Drew Holiday somewhere else, which is going to be difficult with the contract that boy has, you're probably going to have Rozier having the same attitude over there that he had over here.
Well, all I can say, Daniel, is, again, Danny Ainge must do better job finding and surrounding his core players with more and better complementary players than this year. This year, he just loaded us with talents with no observation and second thoughts about how persons will mix on the court, and that killed us. You and I diagnosed the problems after 10-10 start in November. I remember the show. I specifically diagnosed the problems from no hierarchy on the team, from wrong rotations, from wrong chemistry, from role players do not exist, from poor bench players, from experimentation with the bench. We were hoping then that the things will change. But in the Milwaukee series, the same problems, just like October, just like November. And nothing to add there. Must do better job in fulfilling the roster around the core players. First find core players, then fulfilling the roster with more and more complementary role players. For me, Terry Rozier is ex-Boston Celtics player. I wish him all the best in career, and I'm moving on from him. I'm signing Rajon Rondo, George Hill, whomever, as a backup point guard. And of course, Kyrie Irving is still plan A, and I'm glad to hear it, as we hear it during the show. This is the end of this video chat number 42. It is a little longer, but we had many news to cover. Three main topics: NBA draft, repercussions of NBA lottery to Anthony Davis potential trades and to the team's assets to acquire Anthony Davis in the trade. And number three, Terry Rozier and his statements. We touched on Danny Ainge and his plans. We touched on Kyrie Irving news and his plans. We touched on Brad Stevens and the changes in the Boston Celtics coaching staff. A lot of things to cover. And from us, you can expect more chats if we have enough material to do the chats in the recent weeks, okay? We will do probably the show in the first 10 days of June, Celtics Talk Radio show, and we will do draft show, of course. This is set. But other than that, we will do maybe small formats like the Celtics flash news, you know, if something, or the longer chats like this one, if we have enough material, or if we need to do video chat and breakdown like this one. And until then, I recommend you to watch the playoffs Eastern Conference, Milwaukee Bucks leading 1-0 against Toronto Raptors. Game number 2 starting in a few minutes. Golden State Warriors 2-0 against Portland. For me, it will be probably the sweep, despite Warriors not having Kevin Durant, or maybe Warriors in 5. And Warriors will win the title, just like we said at the beginning of the year. I would be shocked if Milwaukee or Toronto win the title. Anyway, that's all from my side. Stay safe and follow us on our pages. We Bleed Green Celtics Fans Forum page, Celtics Talk Radio page, Celtics Talk Radio Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channel Celtics Talk Radio, where you are going to be able to listen our video chats and breakdowns of the games and the Celtics news like this one. I hope that you enjoyed watching us just like we enjoyed preparing this material for you. That's all from me. Wish you a good day everywhere where you are. Stay safe. God bless you. Go Celtics. Daniel.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks, the beginning of June. If we do have any breaking news that comes out, of course, they've already made it clear that teams, even though technically we're still in the 2018-2019 season, the moment the Celtics were eliminated was the moment they could officially start trading. So Danny Ainge, if he wanted to, could trade for Anthony Davis today, for all we know. So, we could, if we have any breaking news that's a major story, any big deals like that come through, we'll end up having something done. If it's not a radio show, then we'll do it via video chat for you to give you the details in this case. It's good to hear Danny Ainge is getting back to normal, getting healthy in this case. It's losing him would be too much, would be a big void that can't be replaced, in my opinion. And we'll just have to see now what happens. Danny Ainge has a few options in this situation that he can take advantage of. I just mentioned one, or we just mentioned one with Rozier, and what you could do to him with the restricted free agency and using him as a fill-in for the trade for Anthony Davis. We already mentioned Bradley Beal possibly. I already gave you the reports on the Lakers and who they're interested in possibly getting if they don't get Davis. So the next few weeks until the beginning of July are going to be crazy, ladies and gentlemen. So just stick in there and just continue to follow us on the We Bleed Green Celtics Fan Forum. And again, if you're going to look for any insider to give you any news, Adrian Wojnarowski is the one to follow.